Impart the wisdom, brother.
All right, well, thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. And as Dave said, my background is all automotive. In Toyota, prior to that, 15 years as an independent used car dealer, and prior to that, all the jobs in variable operations, none in fixed, so you know which personality I am, right? I was part of the generation that I think created the adversarial atmosphere between customers and dealerships. And my real mission, and we'll talk about it, some of the measurement, but my real mission is to help us fix that. It's time that we fix that. And so that's the mission I'm on. Let's talk a little bit about phones and how it fits that mission. So to get started, I'd like a customer or two to tell you why we're here.
Is there a manager I can feel like to talk to, like right now?
And we'll pause.
People's voicemails.
And we'll plug in the sound. Technical person. I know how to do it, but I don't want to take your job away from you. I know you came here for a reason today. Put that plug over there.
There we go. And now the key is in the ignition. The car will start.
Excellent. Okay. We're going to let a customer or two tell you why we're here.
Is there a manager I can feel like to talk to, like right now, without going to people's voicemails? Because this is, I mean, on behalf.
I haven't seen any of my managers.
I'm going, I mean, no offense, but your store's a little disorganized, okay? And that's why I need to talk to a manager, okay? I need to get a truck situated here, and I'm ready to just go to another dealership because you guys are just not professional. He goes, I'll get right back to you. That was 3 weeks ago. Was very happy. Now I'm not too happy because it seems like ever since we bought the car, he's ignored us. We'd like to be repeat customers because everything was good.
I need to get in touch about an ongoing issue that no one seems to want to return my phone calls.
What's your call?
Yes, I'm looking for.
He is on the phone right now. Could I take a message for him?
Has he been on the phone for the last 2 hours? He never called me back.
Someone just called him. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, if you can please have him call me back. I'm trying to buy a vehicle.
So, could this have happened in your store? Indeed. It doesn't take us long to find these calls, even in stores that measure carefully. The phone process, the caller's journey through your dealership, in my opinion, is where the rubber meets the road, and one of the hardest things to watch. So let's talk more about that. The obsession with the smartphone. 72%, and I think it's more, but the latest number is 72% of us have a smartphone. 2.6 billion globally, expected to go to 6.1, and 46%, and I think I'm one of these, said you can't live without it. That's me. Mine is plugged in and within 10 feet of my bed every night. Raise your hand. True? And the smartphone has created a new atmosphere. You all can take a text right now and text back to somebody, and it's not offensive at all. You can't take a phone call probably without looking a little rude, but text has changed the world too. So the smartphone is really impacting what we do. This guy, you might have heard of him. I think that is as true a statement as there ever was. I've never met anyone who enjoys calling a business. And we want people to call our business. So we have to find a way to make that more pleasant than it's been. Wouldn't you agree? Customer retention in the cell phone. When you talk about this, how can I make money without spending any? Well, I can fix the process in my business. I can measure and fix the process, the caller's journey, and how it impacts my bottom line. The gap, the infamous gap. You've heard of this, I know you have. Between your principles and your methods, I want you to think about this. Your branding statement, the things you say, the things you do in the service lanes, the things you do in the showroom, what you say on TV and on all your media about who you are. It's about you was my branding phrase. Your dealer for life, you hear all over the place, the right way. We all have a branding statement, right? But the methods that we have on the phone, do they support our branding statement? Simple question to ask yourselves right now. Are you giving the phone caller the experience that you're advertising? And if you're not, think about this. The bigger, the more potent, the more powerful your branding statement is, the more important that the support on the phone happens, or you have a major train wreck. the better your promise to your customers about what it's going to be like compared to your phone process can be a dramatic impact on your business. Now, everybody says this, and you know it's true. You have always fixed what you've measured. So let's talk about this. 2 million call report. We do 2 million calls at a time. We do key metrics of those calls. Let's look at this. And as we do this, I want you to imagine what is it like in your store versus what these numbers look like. First of all, at just under 2 million calls, 22% were new and lease, 18 were used, 51 service, and 9 parts. So 40% sales, 60% service. Make sense? Is that logical to what you would have expected in your store? Let's listen to this call to get set up for the next piece of data.
Can I help you?
Sales, please.
Actually, my sales are in a meeting at the moment. Did you want me to have somebody call you back?
No, let them stay in the damn meeting. They just lost a sale.
Now, I play that because we're about to go into the sales numbers of the 2 million call report. But I ask you, do you all have that Saturday morning meeting or that Monday morning meeting where everybody's in sales is not available for the phone because they're in training to do what? Sell cars, right? So think about that process for a second. It's very common. Why are your customers calling sales? Well, let's look at it. They're calling about availability. They're calling about price. We know that. General other calls. But availability is the big number. But the last sentence there is why they're calling your store. This is what I think you need to take home with you. They're calling to try to rule you out. We found out from Andrew Diffendorfer that the customer now goes to 1.4 dealerships. I'm going to tell you that they call 7. And what they're doing on the telephone is attempting to rule you out because they're only going to go to 1.4 and buy from 1. So when they're on the phone with you, yes, they're calling about availability, yes, they're calling about price and other kinds of messages, but what they're calling to do is select a dealer. And they're going to call 7 and buy from 1. So would you agree? They're trying to rule you out nicely. They don't even know they're trying to rule you out, but they are. Look at this number. If you don't take anything else home with you today, I've got 2 numbers I'm going to say that about, by the way, so this is the first. In 2 million calls, the most recent, 32% of the people who asked for sales didn't get there. Now, I'm not talking about people whose phone disconnected. I'm not talking about dropped calls, cell calls. I'm talking about ask the reception person, may I speak to sales? 1 in 3 did not speak to sales. This is one of those questions I want you to ask yourself. What's it like in your store? Is that a possible number in your store? Everybody says no. I promise. It's possible. It's average. This one's even more important. In 2 million calls, 52% of the calls that did connect, 52% of the callers that spoke to an agent about buying a car did not provide their contact information. They were not, we call it earn, ask, and receive, right? We didn't earn it, ask it, or receive the customer contact information. That includes the denials when we did ask and they said no, but that's minuscule. 52% didn't earn on the phone enough. So in the old days before integration into CRM, there wasn't enough data for anybody to put it in CRM. Now your CRM will take the telephony data in, and luckily most CRMs have a pretty good match system, but often can't create a new lead or append a lead because there isn't enough information to do that. So 1 in 3, 32%, we didn't answer. Of those that we did answer, over half, we didn't get enough information to put in our CRM on our own manually. If we did answer the calls, the 27% that resulted in an appointment would become 42. In other words, when you answer the call and speak to somebody, the ratio would become 42%. It's 27 because of the amount that don't talk to us. So I'm going to say don't blame your CRM. When you don't have enough data in there or when you have too much data sitting in the telephony bucket, don't blame your CRM. trained to earn, ask, and receive that customer contact information. And by the way, if your team says, "Oh, don't worry about it, boss," I get reverse lookup and I write it down, and then I can get it creepy, not earned. We don't hear it, we don't know it counted because we don't hear it. We can't know that somebody wrote down a reverse lookup. But that's the creepy way, and that's not the most effective way. Would you agree that at least in your store, 18% of your unsold follow-up leads in your CRM end up buying a car? Raise your hand if that number is close to your number. Raise your hand if it's higher. Some will say it's considerably higher. If you think about that, 8 in 10 calls across the nation are not properly entered in CRM. 8 in 10 real sales calls are not properly entered in your CRM. You need a tool that identifies that because your CRM is your lifeblood. It's everything to how you manage these leads. So if 8 in 10 aren't properly entered in CRM, I put ... there because if you know you're putting 20% of them on the road and you're only putting 20% of them in of your sales calls, the math is pretty simple. We have to learn how to earn, ask, and receive. We have to learn how to answer the phone. We have to be staffed properly at the right time and have the right routing and have the right number of people answering the phone during the day to get those calls in. This is what happens. What you got left? You spend an advertising dollar, you didn't answer 32%, and then you didn't gather the customer contact information on 52, you got 33 cents left on your dollar. And how many of you have been to the GM or are the GM or DP that the team comes to with 3 days to go, boss, we got to sell 10 more of these. There's 50 grand on it. We got to do this. Go on the radio, do an email blast, do this, do that. If you attend to this all during the month, you won't have that issue. Would you agree? Now, the customer's experience. The pendulum is swinging again. It always does. So fixed operations is critical. Anybody in here solely dedicated to fixed operations? Or duly dedicated to fixed operations? For those of you that are not, let me suggest this. You already know that your service team is probably your #1 sales referrer in your business. Your caller's journey in the service department is as important to you as salespeople as it is to the service department. Now we know that there's been shrinking margins that have created even more focus on fixed ops revenue and retention. Take a look at this number. The average ownership has reached 6.5 years. That's impactful when it comes to our fixed operations. Between 2006 and 2015, I don't have the data for 16. So in your service department, think about this. A retained customer calls your fixed operations department 20 times for every 1 time they call your sales department. That's 20 opportunities to impress and keep a customer, or 20 opportunities to lose a customer to your competitor or to an aftermarket business. 20 to 1. Does that number shock anybody? You agree with that number in gut? All right, so I often say this. If you're a sales manager, pay attention to this number because this number is driving your business. And if you're smart enough, I shouldn't say that, I don't want to be political. If you have an active sales process in your service lane, then this is even more important. How many of you do? How many of you are selling out of your service lane? I encourage you, I'm not an expert on this, but I measure those that are, and I encourage you to consider it. We see as many as 4 in every 100 ROs buying a car in a well-done process. Anyway, back to 20 to 1, it drives that. Hey, we got another call for your entertainment.
Thank you for choosing. How can I help you?
Yes, I'm still waiting to speak to somebody. This is the 5th time. Does anybody pick the phone up?
They're probably busy at this point. And what is the year and model of your vehicle, ma'am?
Is there anybody I could talk to?
You don't want to give me your year and model of the vehicle?
I just want to talk to somebody.
Okay. Well, I will pass this information to one of my service advisors. That way I can make sure they can give you a call back. Okay, Becky?
How long will this take?
As soon as one of them is available. I can't say that for sure.
Oh my God. If I don't get a call back, I'm reporting you guys.
They got reported and that dealership is now closed. I don't play this as a one-off. I don't want you to think of this as a one-off. This is the kind of thing, if you're switchboard operator, if you have a traditional receptionist, talk to them. This happens all day. That particular receptionist tried, she didn't have all the tools she needed, but she tried to stay calm. She needed a emergency talk to this person process, and they didn't have that, but she tried. This happens every day, every day. I used to hire a receptionist, say graduating from high school, 18 years old, June. In August, they retired at 75. It's the hardest job in the store, and we can make it harder. Fixed ops calls. 46% women. Yep. 23% appointment set, and 46. I don't have my Wi-Fi on. I don't know why that's happening, and I'm sorry. 46% didn't reach an agent. 23% appointment set. That's a huge number. We're trying to, in our fixed operations, we have a couple of purposes, more than just getting an appointment set, obviously. But an appointment set is the key to what we want to have happen. If we're not reaching an agent 46% of the time, think about the impact of that. Callers asking for fixed ops, 46. When they connect, there's 55%. So just answering the phone, again, raises the connection, the appointment set, the RO count, the feed to your sales department considerably. If you're catching the theme here, unless you're so bad at answering the phone that voicemail is a better option, just answer the damn phone. Find out what's wrong with your routing system and your staff to do that. If you're like me, I created this, I had a 350 car store. I had this big funnel of calls going to one person because I wasn't going to spend another $450 a week. Wonder if you're doing that. Why do they call service? This is interesting. 48% repair orders, 32% oil changes. That's 80%, and I don't think that surprises anybody. The next thing I'm going to tell you should surprise you. 18% of your callers are calling to see if their car is ready. The ideal number is 0. That's a CSI nightmare. That's a drive a customer to another place to get their work done next time nightmare. I'd like you to consider what causes that to happen. Usually, it's a overactive calls to your service lane people directly that can't make their outbound calls, can't adjust, they don't have a process, they didn't get text permission, or they're just on overwhelmed. Service writers, by the way, are overwhelmed every day, and it's our job to help them manage their outbound calls or get somebody to make it for them. But think about that, 18% are calling to see if their car is ready. Some of them are calling for their second or third time today to see if their car is ready. A most unpleasant experience. What?
It looks like it is needing a radiator.
Yeah, he said, I talked to him on Saturday. He said they were going to have the radiator in and have it done today.
Oh,
and
okay.
I hadn't heard anything, and when I called, I got transferred literally 5 times, and then somebody finally said no one had seen, so.
Is this going to be done today? Okay. Okay, apparently when we took the radiator out, right, yeah. The one that they shipped here, when it got here, it was damaged, so we had to order you another new one. So,
okay.
Did they tell you when it was going to be here? It will be here tomorrow morning, sir.
Okay, well, I'll check back
Okay,
tomorrow.
he said he found out about 20 minutes ago. That's probably where he was when we called earlier, so. All right?
All right.
All right, sir. Thank you. Goodbye.
Customers are way more polite than most would have been, but that was his 5th call. They knew about one of the other ones. The enemy of CSI is that 18%. I want you to consider this as sales and service people, that you have to create a measurement, you have to create a schedule, you have to solve this problem. Text is a great way to solve it. Get permission to text it right up. Make an appointment, schedule an appointment. When it says schedule an appointment at write up that you'll call that customer at a certain time or text that customer at a certain time, whether or not the car is ready, and put it on a calendar. Now the big thing is you can't fail to do that. If you're going to take this up on, it's just worse failure if you don't do that. But find a way in your store, and largely it's to unclutter the job of calling the customer. identify whose job it is and make it accountable. But find a way to clear that up, and you will retain more customers in both your sales and your service, if that's happening in your thing. Now take a look at this. This is a big CDJR store, and I have this picture because I wanted you to see something unusual. That's not a BDC. Those are receptionists. This store is a big store, but think about this for a second. They have taken the reception process off the showroom floor. When you look at pictures like this, are you living in this world? Raise your hand if your receptionist who answers the phone is on the showroom floor. It's the majority. Do you understand that, and as a vendor now, when I walk into dealerships, I almost always walk up to a person sitting there. They have to choose between me and the phone every time. And if they're on the phone, they're embarrassed and they look down, right? And then I start looking around for the salesmen that are running into the corners to try to find somebody who will help me. And the receptionist isn't being mean. They can only do one thing at a time. By the way, service writers as well can only be with somebody or answer the phone. So in this world, if you look over here, this may be a little extreme, but I see it very commonly. This is a person who's overtasked with a bunch of jobs. Look at all the things going on that he or she has responsibility in doing on the showroom floor, and the clutter, and the inability to meet and greet a customer, the most meaningful person that's going to walk in my showroom today, in that clutter. On the right is somebody who's dedicated to greeting. The only reason the phone's on that desk is to call somebody who needs to be called, to make an outbound call for somebody who came in. Think about that in your stores. Think about this for a second. When you change your process, it does bring risk. One of the reasons that we will go back off and not change something we know we need to change is because when we've tried to change before, it has failed. Change brings risk. You have to plot change. Consider building and outlining the process you want to support first, then fill your seats. Hire, train, measure, hold accountable the people that are sitting in the right seats on the bus. So I would ask you, if you see anything in here that you find true in your business, I would ask you to consider going back. Don't interview those people yet. Design the process that works in your culture, that solves the problem that you have. It's not the same for everybody. Once you design that, then hire to that, train to that, measure it to make sure it works, and hold the team accountable for it. Hold yourself accountable for it too. Change brings risk, and that's why we don't like to change, because we failed at it. By the way, talking about to BDC or not to BDC, I hosted 4 BDC funerals as a dealer, and each one cost many, many zeros. So I know how to do this wrong as well. Risk, there's risk in change. To BDC or not to BDC, I want you to consider this. Look at the number here at the bottom. I do a test 2 or 3 times a year, and I grab all the calls I can from BDCs. Now this is all BDCs. This is traditional call centers. It's what we call the business detention center, the rotating salespeople into a phone focus, but it's phone focused people versus calls in the sales department going to the salesman directly. It's twice, the BDC environment is twice as likely to set an appointment. Now the show ratio can vary between 55 and 75, and the buy ratio, which by the way, I think that if those of you that are happy with 60% buy on shows, you're doing it wrong. The customer's chosen you. They've dialed 7 places. You've passed all the tests. They're in the showroom. You've got the car. They like you. You told them the truth. They drove to see you. It better be 80%. If it's not, I think something's going wrong. That's a little aside. BDC, I'm not trying to negate the power of a sales team taking calls. I'm just giving you statistics across the country. When you have a dedicated call center taking the calls, that it's I think 18 to 36% at the first level, and it goes higher, but it's always doubled. So just think about that. How many of you are not in a call center BDC environment? You have your sales team answering the phone. Does this feel true to you when I say this, or are your numbers good with your sales team? Yeah, yeah. She said they do monitor their calls, and some of the calls are bad. Just statistically, it works better when you have somebody dedicated to it, trained to it, and responsible for it. By the way, a BDC manager, if you have one, we found that those that are empowered and can go toe-to-toe with the GSM and call for a meeting and set up and make sure everything's in CRM and all that kind of stuff, makes it work. An empowered BDC manager. But consider whether you should or shouldn't BDC. And if you want to know how to do it wrong, see me afterwards. I can teach you. Parts department. I know that most of you are not involved in service, but I want you to consider this. The parts employee need to be as polite and as good on the phone as everyone else, and traditionally we don't focus on that. Most of you have Mr. Hold working for you. Parts hold, right? Most of you have parts people that are working front counter and back counter, serving the mechanics and serving the retail customers. Imagine the power of a parts person taking a phone call from a retail customer who asks about a starter for their 2006 model, whatever you sell. And the parts guy not only giving a price, but saying, hey, by the way, would you like to have a quote on installing that? 3 out of 10 people say, yes, I would. If it's me, I don't want to put that thing in on Saturday. It'll take me 2 days. You guys can do it in an hour, right? 3 out of 10 will say yes if you empower the parts department to just ask that question, right? And then give them the tool, either the service guide or a quick connection to somebody in service to get that done. Parts department is a pretty important department that most of us don't pay much attention to. I'm going to call this the power of 10. I was struck this morning by Mr. Metter talking about, I didn't put it in there. I thought I did. Talking about big data. All this phone data that I'm giving you now, the 2 million call report, all the metrics that I could give you 4 hours of detailed aggregate data and performance measurements. At dealership level, it doesn't do you any good on a daily basis. You need the actionable data that you can fix now. You need to start today with yesterday's calls. You need to fix them. You need to know the number of people that didn't get through. You need to know the number of people that got through and didn't leave their information. You need the sales people who tried to call your sales department and are not in your CRM. That's the number one thing you need to know, right? You need to know what the caller's journey was like in your store yesterday. Most of you have audio recordings. You can listen. You can do what you do. You can have someone listen. But you need to know what happened on that phone from the day before, because that you can fix. If somebody comes in with you and goes over your report weekly or monthly, you can watch trends and you can train and you can make a difference, and that's important. But you can't fix what happened yesterday. And more importantly, you can turn that on and watch it as it happens today. You can see the abandoned callers that got lost in the phone tree, and you could actively call them back. You can fix this as it happens. There's a number of callers that call you every day, by the way, that are unhappy about something that happened. They're post-sale issues. You need to know the post-sale issues. They're not sales calls. They're, you didn't give me my extra keys. I don't have my WIO. My tags are expired. This is the 5th time I've called you about my registration. You need to know that, and you can't know that Friday. You need to know that today. So the power of 10, turning big data, take it away from being overwhelmed by it and turn it into little bites of data that you can take action on. Let's talk about some best practices real quick here at the end. We talked about this before, but don't make a customer choose. And by the way, if you want this deck, I see you taking some pictures. You can just text me. I think my number's at the end, or you see me, and I'll send you the deck if you want it. But on your receptionists, don't make them make a choice. Isolate your receptionist if you can, and let them be the receptionist, and let the greeter be the greeter. You can put salespeople in a greeting position if it's a matter of budget, but dedicate that person. If you can't do that, do this. Put up cameras and put a monitor on your receptionist's desk. Let her see the service writers and the sales tower or salespeople on the monitor, so that when somebody calls up and asks for John, the service writer, she can not just look for a red light, she can see John's with a customer. I'm sorry, John's with a guest right now. May I get his assistant to help you, or would you rather leave a voicemail? Intelligent way to handle the calls. $2,000 if you spent that much on a camera and a monitor. Anybody doing that now? Are you? Is it powerful? How long have you been doing it? Excellent. Perfect. So only one of you though, and it makes a big, big difference. I'm like a big thief, like being in a 20 group, I steal all the good ideas. So now I have a couple thousand group and I steal all the good ideas. I stole that one. But it's a great one. When I was operational, if I had done that, it would have made a big difference. Live answer. When you can, your customers want you to answer the phone. They don't want to press 1, press 2, press 3, press 4. They don't want to go through a second loop. They don't want to have a third choice. If you have to use an IVR, press 1 or press 2 to manage volume, if you've chosen to do that, then make sure when they press that number that something happens at the other end of that they aren't given another choice or don't go to voicemail. Make sure your voicemails are identified. Right now, I promise you that at least half of you have voicemail boxes that are being transferred to by the switchboard operator that say voicemail box 45675 is full. Think about that for a second. Customers want live answers. They want warm transfer. Is it time to give them what they want? Is it time to be different than the other guy? How can you differentiate yourself from your competitors by making this part pleasant? They might not even know why they're recommending you at a cocktail party. They just have a good feeling about you. And it could have happened here if you take down that gap between what you promised them and what you give them. Know when they call. You need to know your peak times, and they're different for all of you. A lot of times service calls, 7 to 9, sales calls 10 to 11, common. I can tell you for sure starting at 2 o'clock is when your service update calls start. But know when your peak calls are and make sure your staff. Don't let your team go to lunch when your customers go to lunch and call you. Number one common problem. I see it all the time. Text. Let's talk about text for a second. You can get permission to text your customer with a status update and service. We talked about that. We have an experience that we think is working well for customers, and that is text enabling your legacy line, which you can do, the line you have used for 50 years, and text enabling your advertised lines. They should be local area code, by the way, and local's better anyway. 800, in my opinion, is no longer required. Everyone knows it doesn't cost anything to call long distance. Local area code, customers would prefer to call local area code. You'll get more call volume, especially it depends on where you are, especially the culture where you are, but everywhere people would rather call a local area code to make sure they're not calling the call center in New York, right? Local area code, I believe, I'm not an expert, but I think it works better in search. Somebody back me up on that. So local area code, but local area code text enabled now allows you to create a customer initiated text. I'm not talking about in your CRM where you have the outbound text with the double opt-out and all the right rules so you can mark it with that text. I'm talking about creating a customer initiated text. When you're making outbound calls, 70% of those calls you're calling cell phones. 20% of those people are doing what we all do. Who's this? What's up? I'm in a meeting. And you're calling them. Now, when they text back an 800 number, it doesn't say you just reached a landline. It just goes into a black hole, and your customer doesn't know because you don't respond. You can create a vision of those texts on a pop-up and designated screens in your store. You can do local lines. There's a lot of people. AutoBytel will help you get the local line done. A little plug for AutoBytel. I know they're not here. But it's an important thing to meet the customer where they want to be met. So I'd ask you to consider that text. Now you got to manage it well, and there's more to it. You got to make sure you follow the laws. I'd be happy to talk to you on the side about that if you're interested in it. But I think it's an important process. Focus on your parts selling service. We talked about that. You can increase your RO count and your parts per RO with that focus. With that said, I'd like to just open the floor to any questions that you might have before I conclude. Did I hit anything important? Any questions that you have about the process? Anybody doing any of this stuff and can give us a testimonial that it works? Anybody ready for a break and want to do something else? I thank you very much for coming. Let me know if you want a copy of this.